Can hypnosis help with grief, and how? Grief is a terrible thing. It is actually considered one of the worst emotions a human can feel. But we know that everybody will experience it at some point in their life. And grief isn't only about losing people in your life. Grief is a feeling of sadness, a profound sadness that is brought out by any sense of profound loss. So we get heavy loss, we get heavy grief. This could be the loss of a spouse, and God forbid, they say the worst one on the scale of out of 100 is 100, which is the loss of a child, and even the loss of a friend or the loss of a friendship with the person still alive, or even a pet dog, or believe it or not, a goldfish if you're a kid. I'm not exaggerating, because for a child, grief can happen in really, really surprising ways. And this can be a sense of loss, which is profound and terrible. Now, it could even be something like the loss of a location when you move. I can remember moving a lot as a kid and hating it, missing the old place, and that is a form of grief as well. So it can happen in so many ways. I was in Ireland in 2011 with a group. There were 19 of us there at Lachine Castle. We had such a phenomenal week with those amazing Irish people that when we left the final day, getting into the tour bus, you see the video, almost everybody is choking back tears. It was grief, leaving Ireland, leaving the castle. It's strange, isn't it? These things go very, very deep with us. In Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, they say grief is connected to the lungs. Now, isn't that unusual, the model? But it makes sense, because what do you do when you're experiencing a profound sadness? You sigh. And they say that's the processing of the grief. We sigh when it's affecting us deeply. And we'll come back to that point about the lungs. Now, when I was a therapist back in the 1990s, I treated grief quite frequently. It's something I'm well accustomed to in my own life. And grief is something that sweeps over us in waves. It can be triggered by just about anything. My father remarried when my mom died, and the woman he married was a widow. And when he died then, she was widowed twice, and she was coping quite well until one day she found a pair of his reading glasses in a drawer. And seeing that triggered all the grief, and it came flooding back. Grief happens in waves that increase in intensity as you're processing the grief, but over time they fade. Hanging on to memories can help you. Hanging on to things that connect you with the past can help you. It can help you process, or it can help you make sense of what's happened to you. And over time, as I said, the waves will become softer and less frequent. But I don't think grief ever goes away completely. And it cannot be ignored. Grief has to be processed, not kept repressed and locked up where it's harming you beneath the surface. Now, what do I mean by that? There's a model of negative emotions that I learned from a Swiss psychologist. The idea of grief and negative emotions stored in the right brain electromagnetically. And over about 2 years, grief tends to dissipate enough that you can cope. It doesn't mean it's ever gone. But the great news is hypnosis can discharge and depotentiate this electromagnetic charge and depotentiate the power of the grief itself. When you're dealing with grief with a client, direct suggestion in hypnosis is always a good choice, giving powerful, positive suggestions to overwhelm the bad feelings. Hypnosis can enable people to say goodbye to someone or something they have lost, as though they're actually saying goodbye to that person, and bring closure to that point in their life. In my own case, the example I think of was my dog, my bull terrier Lockjaw, died in 1996, and I was devastated by grief. And I went to a grief counselor, as a therapist I did, and she ran this process with me that did nothing whatsoever but make things worse. She told me to imagine I was walking the dog and in the places I would walk with him, and then he disappeared through the fence and I never saw him again. That brought no closure whatsoever, and I had to work on myself in other ways to deal with it, because we have to take away the bad emotion and then backfill or bring resolution in some way, something positive. We can keep the good thoughts and the memories of the person and enhance and magnify those. And this is best when we add other methods, not just hypnosis. A great way of dealing with grief is through Jin Shin Jitsu. And I said in Chinese medicine, the lungs are connected with grief. Well, in this method, the ring finger is connected with the lungs. So you grasp your ring finger on either hand firmly, but not too tight, and you'll feel a pulse. Keep holding it as you feel the pulsation. And what it's doing, according to this system of medicine, it is discharging and it is depotentiating all the negative emotions. It will help you feel better. And of course, my own 6-step tapping method will depotentiate the negative emotions of grief and keep all the positive memories intact. And there's something that's fairly new in therapy called free spotting. And this is great for self-work, where you can eliminate the different layers of grief as they present themselves to you, even in your spare time. So check out free spotting. Now finally, when should you even treat grief? Should you even treat grief? Some people say, oh no, you shouldn't treat it right away. The person needs to go through the pain. Why? That doesn't make any sense. You're not doing anything positive for the person or thing you've lost by suffering more. So we say, don't wait. Start early. Use the methods to depotentiate, to remove the negative emotions, the profound sadness, to process it so you can heal faster. That way you'll be in control of your emotional states because you'll eliminate the negative and you can start to be you again. Hanging on to grief doesn't help anybody, so use the techniques on yourself as well. And a good hypnotist or hypnotherapist can work with you to lessen the pain and help you get through this. But don't expect it to go away completely. In my experience, grief never completely disappears, but as they say, sadness dredges the heart to take in more love. Let it become positive, and a positive source of a different you. If you're interested in becoming a hypnotist, or you are a hypnotist already and you want to help people with things like grief, check out the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. You'll find a link in the description underneath this video.